Hello and welcome back to another episode of Her Side of the Ruck. I'm Tash and this episode is proudly sponsored by Hook and Flanker. On the show today, I'll be discussing the round 12 fixtures of the Northern Hemisphere teams in the United Rugby Championship in the Club of Origin round that sees an honour to the Club of Origins of all the players in the United Rugby Championship. Benice will be making a separate episode about the South African derby, so keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, I'll be talking about the Northern Hemisphere teams taking on each other in round 12 of the URC. So let's get into it. Before I talk about the round 12 fixtures, let's recap on some of the round 11 action that happened. Benetton drew with Scarlets 20 all in round 11, giving a little bit of an indication that Scarlets are kind of on the way up. In round 11, Glasgow Warriors beat long-term rivals Munster at home at Scotstoun Stadium, with many of the Scotland squad being out with international duty. And I always think as a Warriors fan, beating Munster and beating Edinburgh are definitely on the same playing field. Despite the loss for Munster, it was a pretty successful weekend in round 11 for the other Irish clubs. Connacht beat Zebre on the road by 16 points. Leinster beat Edinburgh at home and Ulster defeated Cardiff all in round 11. And in a local Welsh derby, the Ospreys beat the Dragons 19-13. After round 11, Glasgow Warriors topped the URC table to my absolute delight. Leinster came second after a fairly slow start to the season, but they've seemed to claw it back in a very strong manner. The DHL Stormers sit at third and Ulster are fourth. Moving on to round 12, which is Club of Origin round. This is one of the many themes that the URC does to promote its games, and it honours the clubs where players first picked up a rugby ball or the clubs where they kind of started out in their rugby career. Origin round also comes at an ample time, and the strategy of selecting it during this time helps create attention during a period where there might be a little bit of rugby fatigue from the Men's Six Nations, although I'm sure there'll be plenty of rugby fans who are really glad that there's lots of rugby action happening in the URC this weekend. But Club of Origin round, it creates a narrative around the URC in a difficult time where there hasn't been much club rugby happening with the five nations that are taking part in this competition. So having the Club of Origin story just brings back attention, and also it's really nice, I think, for the clubs in the league to do this and honour where the players really started. I would definitely say keep an eye out for the communications from the league and all of the URC clubs who will be spotlighting stories of their players and maybe even their coaches too in the Club of Origin round. As I said at the top of the episode, Benice will be talking about the two South African derbies taking place in round 12, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel to not miss that video coming out very soon. Let's focus on the Northern Hemisphere teams in round 12. On Friday night, Cardiff play Leinster at Cardiff Arms Park. Leinster have won their last 5 matches and Cardiff have won 2 out of their last 5 matches in the competition. I think we'll see a heavily rotated Leinster side, given a lot of their big names are currently away with the Irish national squad during the Men's Six Nations. If there was any time for Cardiff to beat Leinster, it's in this round. It's also at Cardiff Arms Park, so that could be a crucial home advantage, and this would be an ideal win for the Welsh team. And I think Leinster have managed to claw themselves back into that top 4 now, so a loss for them with another break, and then they'll get the return of their international players in the next few months or so. I don't think would be too much of a loss for them per se, as I think for Cardiff there's a lot riding on the line on this fixture. Also on Friday night is Edinburgh v the Scarlets at the Hive. These are two teams that have had very much roller coaster seasons so far. Edinburgh are that team that you often think should win certain games and then lose the games you think they should win, and then go on to win games in very convincing manners that you thought that they had no chance of winning. Sometimes that isn't always the case, and sometimes they win games that you thought that they should have won, and that they lose games that you were like, yeah, the other team was a lot stronger on that occasion. But they are this roller coaster team, aren't they? We've seen a really mixed bag of performances from the Edinburgh side, and when they're facing Scarlets, who seem to be improving quite a lot. I think their first 6 rounds in the URC were a little bit shaky. There were quite a lot of issues, and then after the Autumn Nations series back in November, they started to have a bit more of a confident run. Edinburgh will probably look to be retaining a top 8 place where they can, whereas the Scarlets, they're maybe a little bit too far off the top 8 now, but they're obviously going to give it their best shot. Can you blame some of the stuff that's happening in the regions, given the state of the WRU? I don't know, but I think there's a lot of gusto in the Welsh teams to really show that They mean something to the players, they mean something to the rugby community and the regions that they represent. So I think this could be a really close contest. On Saturday, Connacht face Glasgow, and the Warriors have lost plenty of their starting 15 to international duty. But if they confront up in the way that they did against Munster, I have no doubt they'll secure a win on this occasion. But let's not underestimate Connacht. They've retained quite a lot of their players, given most of the Irish national squad do come from Leinster and Munster. So Connacht have retained a lot of their players and will definitely be looking for a win on this occasion. I think it will be close, but I am obviously going to back the Warriors because once a warrior, always a warrior. After a loss in round 11, I think Munster will bounce back fairly strongly against Zebri Palmer, who they face in round 12. I personally don't see the Irish side losing this one, but never underestimate Zebri. They don't switch off and can punish you, especially in the final 10 minutes of a game. I've watched plenty of URC matches where Zebri just run the ball. It's very loose play, it's very fast play, and they have a lot of youngsters who just like running the ball and scoring tries. So Zebra are also one of the most successful teams for scoring losing bonus points in the URC in the history of the competition. So never write them off. Definitely it's an 80-minute game, but in terms of overall skill set, I don't see Munster losing this at all. Also on Saturday, Dragons take on Benetton, and both of these teams really need a win. Benetton come into this fixture after a draw and 2 losses, and Dragons have won 1 out of their last 3 games. On Stats Watch, they favour the Dragons, who have scored more points this season and had greater tackle success than the Italian side. My question for the Dragons will be whether they really miss their key playmaker of Aaron Wainwright in the back row. He's been phenomenal for Wales in the national team, and I think when you look at his stats on international level, I think some of these stats at club level can certainly be attributed to him. But saying that, Benetton have lost plenty of their players to international duty too. But then again, if there's a time for the Dragons to win this fixture, it's certainly this weekend. And the final Northern Hemisphere match taking place this weekend is the Ospreys, who host Ulster. And Ospreys are currently 9th in the URC table, and Ulster is 5 places above them. I've been so impressed with Ulster this season, and I thought they had a very average 24-25 season. There was a lot of changes, I think, structurally happening within the organisation at Ulster. I think they had a new CEO, a couple of changes with players, bringing new players in, and a couple of changes in the coaching staff last season. And they seem like they've really found their feet and are really enjoying their rugby. I do think Ulster have the upper hand on this occasion. They haven't lost too many players to international duty, but Ospreys will go hard. I think when you're in 9th position with, there's still what, 6-7 rounds left in the URC left to play. But if you can make sure you're in the top 8 and you retain your top 8 place with a couple of rounds to go, it kind of alleviates that pressure going into the final 2 rounds of scrambling for the top 8, because that's what it is for some teams. It is a scramble for the top 8. My gut is saying Ulster will win this, but I don't think Ospreys will go down without a fight. Will you be watching the URC this weekend? Both Bernice and I definitely will be here on her side of the ruck. And if you have any games that you're specifically looking forward to, please let us know down in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed this quickfire preview of the Northern Hemisphere games taking place in the URC in the Club of Origin round this weekend. If you did, drop a like and subscribe below. That's all we've got time for on this episode of Her Side of the Ruck. So I'm going to sign off here from the UK, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.